Hi there, friends. I would like to talk to you today about rights. I think it's a very important conversation to have. In my mind, there are two types of rights. There are the fundamental rights, as established by the founding fathers, as we find them in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You know, the right to own your own life. Nobody has the right to take it away from you. You have the right to protect your life. Freedom. Everybody is born with the fundamental right to be free and pursue of happiness. Everybody is free to pursue happiness. You see how interesting the founding fathers have framed and carefully chose the right words to describe this right. It's not the right to happiness. It's not a right by which people have to receive happiness, I don't know, from other people, from the government and so forth. No, it is the right to pursue happiness. So pretty much every right, ethically and morally, is just a right to take action towards something. You are protected, or should be protected, by the government and so forth. You should be protected toward taking action to accomplish something in life, maybe to grow professionally, to get a job. Nobody should have the right to or try to stop you from getting a job that you deserve, one that is based on your increased performance and knowledge and abilities. Nobody should stop you to learn as much as you can. There shouldn't be no category of people that say that those people or that person should not go pursue a PhD or a master's degree. No, you have the right to pursue education as far as you would like to go and are able to go. So these are the fundamental rights that we are born with. Some expressions given by the Creator. There are tons of people out there that are no longer religious people in the classic meaning. Maybe they are spiritual one way or another, but not religious. Let's not talk about that. It's a different conversation, but hey, they perceive the fundamental rights as being given by the nature of people and the nature of the world that we live in. Once you're born, you have those rights. But there is another category of rights that I want to talk to you about, and that it's about the rights that liberals call rights, or they come up with a list of so-called rights. Now, we have to be very careful when we define these rights, like, for example, a right to education, or a right to be educated, a right to health care, or a right to receive means for health insurance, a right for a job. It's like somehow the government has the obligation to give you a job or to give you a minimum wage and so forth. These are very, very different types of so-called rights. I wouldn't even call them rights when compared with the fundamental rights. Why? Because the way that liberals frame this type of rights, it comes that with an obligation by someone else to provide you with those rights. The fundamental rights, the first category, the one that I call them the only rights, are the ones that nobody is forced to do anything so that you have those rights or receive those rights or exert those rights. No. So think of 10 people. 8 of them wake up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Only 2 wake up at 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning and start going to the gym to keep their health, or start working towards something so they have more time, it's quieter, they feel well rested in the morning compared with early in the afternoon. So these people work hard, they improve themselves harder than everybody else, than the rest of the 8 out of 10. So naturally these people would go further in life than the others, correct? let's say that out of those 8 people that wake up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, some, a few of them don't feel like doing much, don't feel like learning, don't feel like working hard, don't feel like getting their rear end off the couch and pushing themselves. So they end up in a position where they cannot afford to buy a car, they cannot afford to buy a home, they cannot afford to cover the type of health insurance that themselves or their family needs. When liberals apply their approach to rights, all of a sudden everybody else, those 2 people that hustle earlier in the morning, all of a sudden they become obligated to provide the means for the others so that they receive their rights. Now let's be very clear. Nobody says, and I don't know any decent conservative that is not willing and happy to help people in need. There are different types of people in need. There are people who are born with disabilities. There are people who get a disability in life. There are people who lose their job beyond their control. Life comes hard at you sometimes. You get sick, an accident, and so forth. So everybody I know, every decent conservative, decent human being is willing and happy to make sure that there are funds set aside or organizations and they get involved. Even some of the taxes they pay, they are happy to go toward helping these people. But there is one thing: how do we make the difference between those who try very hard to get out of the bad situation they find themselves in when they need help, compared with the people that they just don't care? They don't hustle enough, they don't want to push themselves enough, and they think that they have the right to receive this and that and that, and the other people are forced by the government to give them those things. There is no pressure on people to do as much as they personally can in order to reach the maximum that they can, and then the society to cover the rest of it. There are no objective criterias, yet people are forced into taking money out of their own pocket to cover for the others, without any guarantee that those people that receive the help really cannot help themselves, or they do something so that the period of time they need help is limited. It doesn't become unlimited. Just think of this. When you are in school, on today's kids in school, you have children, maybe if they are in school, when they learn, they get good grades. Some other kids don't learn that much and they don't get good grades. Some keep getting bad grades to the point where they have to fail the class, right? Do we give them the right to educate themselves, or to be educated to a point where we force the other kids to maybe give some of their grades, part of their grades, to the other kids, or they have to spend time mandatory to try to help them out? I don't think so. Think of some of your neighbors or people that you know that need a car and they don't have the means to buy one. I know a lot of people like that. I know people that know people like that. Is it mandatory for the neighbors of that person to contribute with money so that they buy a car for the person? I don't think so. Now, there are ways to help. There are churches, there are non-profit organizations that can help, but all these work on a very basic principles that I want to emphasize here. It is voluntary help. It is not mandatory help. It's a voluntary base. And I am sure that human nature is good enough so that a lot of people would voluntarily contribute to different funds, different organizations to help other people. But forcing them in the name of the right that the other people have, without making sure that those people deserve that help, and it's not they are not in that position just because they didn't hustle enough, they don't want to push themselves enough, they don't want to get tired enough, and so forth. Just imagine a non-profit organization, just pick one that you want. Would you like the government to make it mandatory that you take money out of your own pocket every month and you give a certain amount of money to that organization just because that organization is a non-profit organization that helps other people? Maybe builds homes, cheap homes for homeless people, maybe helps Meals on Wheels, elderly people, and so forth. We all find it very naturally for this type of help to be voluntarily. We all find it very natural that such programs become more popular, and we educate more and more people to contribute. But what if all of a sudden the government would make contribution to these organizations mandatory, even establish a certain amount of money that you have to give? Would you find it normal? I don't think so. So please think of that. Next time you talk about rights, you talk about the right to be educated, you talk about the right to health care, you talk about all this, the minimum guaranteed income, the right to have a job or something like that. You have to start looking at these rights the right way. It's not a right to be given stuff. People who need help receive help, and that's not just because it's their right to receive help. The society evolves not because it makes it mandatory for other people to become slaves of others and make sure that they receive their happiness and their health care and their great education and so forth. No, a society is advanced and civilized by making sure that everybody has the opportunity to pursue for themselves. Nobody stops them to get a good education, to hustle themselves to get a better job so they can get access and pay for more advanced medical services. They get the means to buy a car to maybe travel farther for a better job. You see how things connect one to another. So the fundamental rights are only the rights that one person can pursue for themselves. We are not talking about rights in the classic sense, the moral and ethical sense of rights, when we list things that people need to receive, especially by forcing others to pay into that. Those are not rights. That is a form of modern slavery, probably. So let's all stop this nonsense of you're heartless if you don't want a mandatory pay into covering somebody else's health insurance. Or if I dare asking, let me see first what that person did. How much did they hustle? How much time they put an effort into improving their situation before I'm asked to mandatory contribute to fixing something for them. I have that right? I shouldn't be taken away this right of asking before I pay into something, or morally be considered immoral, unethical, just because I question. So again, let's make a separation, a clear separation between the fundamental rights that are related to allowing people, not interfering with the right of people to pursue something that they want or need, compared with everything else that require personal effort, personal performance, and people need to, they have the right to receive those things. Nobody has any right to receive anything. And probably the best proof to that is religion. Every time you ask God for something, remember, you are God's child, right? Well, I'm not very religious. I'm very spiritual, but not religious in the classic term of Christianity, Islam, or any other type of religion. But let's make this comparison, because I think it resonates with a lot of people. God created you. You are God's child. You know that God loves you and everything and so forth. When you pray for this or that, to receive food, to restore your health, and so on. Do you have the right to receive those things? Or maybe God just gave you certain abilities and the mind, created the world, physical laws and everything, and then the only right that you received from God was, hey, I gave you what you need, now you have the right to pursue everything that makes you happy. From a good education, to a good housing, to good health, to anything else that you think of. What type of rights do you think you receive from God? What type of rights do you think you are entitled to by putting pressure on other people? Please give it some thought and feel free to comment. I'm open to a decent conversation. If you come into this with ideas of attacking without any logic, without any decent exchange of ideas, then please save your effort, okay? I'm just willing to engage and learn from and keep an open mind and maybe just exchange back and forth arguments only in a decent manner, ethical, correct manner, based on logic and arguments. Thank you.